Hey, it's Zane. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in today. In this video, I want to share with you why I believe if you hold Bitcoin, you are going to be among the new wealth elite. And I actually believe that Bitcoin, if you hold Bitcoin in any meaningful capacity, and I'm going to share some figures with you here towards the end of this video and really paint a picture for you. But if you hold Bitcoin in any meaningful capacity, I really believe that over the coming years you are going to be in the top 5% in terms of financial elite and wealth holders worldwide. And I realize that's a big statement, and this is not about hyperbole. I'm not here to blow smoke. I'm simply here to rationalize where we are right now and the great inflection point, intersection of the debt-based system that is failing, currencies that have reached the end of their useful life, AI that is coming, the growing wealth gap, this inflationary, which is going to soon transition into a hyperinflationary environment, the fact that governments around the world are essentially insolvent and only being propped up by central banks, and how all of this ties into why Bitcoin is the life raft. Bitcoin is the opportunity for you and I to actually opt out, to transform our lives in ways that you may never have thought possible. But there is a window of opportunity here. I believe that we have 5 years, at a stretch 7 years, but I would say more like 5 years as a window of opportunity to really transform our future and that of our families forever. But you have to take action on this. It's no good just learning and listening and consuming and not creating, not being the master or the masteress of your own destiny. And so I want to get into this today. I really believe that we are in amongst the greatest wealth transfer in history. This is a great wealth shift. And Bitcoin holders who hold their Bitcoin in self-custody are going to be among the new financial elite. And the reason for that is because Bitcoin holders who hold their Bitcoin and lock it down in self-custody, what they are actually holding is real, incorruptible, portable, permissionless, uncensorable, global money, global wealth. Now that in itself is a revolution. That in itself is a transformation. And so I believe that if you hold Bitcoin in self-custody and you're doing this to the nth degree, you are not just going to be in the top 5% globally in terms of the financial elite. I actually believe you're going to be in the top 5% of the top 5%. That's how important I believe that Bitcoin in self-custody to the nth degree is going to be moving forward. And a lot of people are awake to this now, and I hope you are too. It's not enough to just hold Bitcoin. You have to master self-custody, and it's not hard. It's a mindset. It's a new skill. It just takes some simple steps, but this is something you need to be really focused on right now. So this is about education. It's about clarity. It's about conviction, and it's about timing and realizing that this window of opportunity, it's not going to be here forever. You're not always forever and a day going to be able to wake up and decide that you are now going to start stacking sats. You're going to open an account on exchange or with a brokerage and start allocating to Bitcoin. That is a window, that is a privilege, an opportunity that exists right now, but in 3 to 5 years, it's going to become increasingly more difficult and more expensive. Okay, so please don't miss this opportunity. Now is the time to level up your knowledge, your conviction, your education, and your connection with like-minded people who are on a similar path. And this is such a crucial point because I've lost count of the amount of people over the last 9 months who I have consulted with one-on-one who say to me, Zane, There's nobody in my family or my friendship circle who understand what this is. They think I'm crazy. And this is, of course, why I launched my Bitcoin Success Circle community about 2 months ago. And this is why people are joining it every single week now from all over Australia, because they understand the value of being connected with like-minded people who are on a similar journey, and being able to share and to support and to encourage and to share their wins and things that they're going through, and to ask questions and to get support. And so this is why I have my Bitcoin Success Circle, and I'd encourage you to reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about that. But let's talk about the hidden war for your Bitcoin. Now, what I would say about this and how this ties into you being a part of the new financial elite is, if you haven't yet tuned into Simon Dixon's 2-part series that has recently dropped on YouTube, all about Wall Street's attempt to steal your Bitcoin and what they're going to do, and all of the financial engineering and the incentives that they're going to put in front of you to try and separate you from your Bitcoin. If you haven't tuned into that, I would encourage you to drop everything, and over the next few days, watch part 1 and then part 2 of that series. And in fact, I'm going to put this in the show notes for you so that you've got a link to these 2 episodes. Now, it's several hours of watch time, but I'm telling you, every single minute is worth watching. Simon is a highly intellectual guy. He's been around a long time. He understands exactly what Bitcoin is, and he is pounding the table right now, letting everybody know what is on the agenda and what is so crucial in all of this, and this is mastering Bitcoin in self-custody. That is the true revolution. That is the thing that is going to protect you from everything that is coming. Simon talks about how that is going to give you the best possible chance of escaping financial tyranny and surveillance, which the vast majority of people are going to have no option but to succumb to via UBI, Universal Basic Income, which will put a vast majority of people completely dependent on the government, and also central bank digital currencies, which essentially is surveillance money, programmable money that can control your spending patterns, control and surveil your spending habits. And at the end of the day, you have to understand a little about history to know that fiat currency is all about, ultimately, control and surveillance. Fiat currency is what funds the war machine. Without fiat currencies, without central banks being able to print currency at will, without any consultation from the people, they wouldn't be able to fund these endless wars. And I want you to keep that in mind. And so people are waking up to this. They're starting to realize, even the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they're all trying to distance themselves from the world reserve currency, because they can see how broken the system is. And this is why gold right now, it's at all-time highs. Central banks around the world are hoarding gold at a great rate of knots. And so there's so much going on right now, and you just have to be paying attention to this and saying to yourself, well, what can I do to protect myself and my family? And I'm telling you that Bitcoin is front and center in that conversation you need to be having with yourself right now. So Wall Street is going to try and separate you from your Bitcoin. They're going to try and make it so seductive for you to hand over your Bitcoin. They want it at any cost, but once they get it, you're never ever getting it back. Okay? And so you have to be absolutely clued in, future focused, resolute, tuned in with other people who are part of your Citadel Fortress community, who are helping you to stay focused. You need to quieten the noise, and you need to keep your eye on the ultimate prize. as all of this starts to unfold. Simon talks about how there's essentially going to be three classes of people over the coming years. One is the absolute global elite, the financial elite, the untouchable elite, who are the top 3 to 5% globally, who own all of the assets, who control all of the major corporations. Then there's going to be people who hold Bitcoin in self-custody and who have mastered that. And then everybody else is essentially going to be part of the surveillance system. And so if it's not possible for you to be and to elevate yourself to that top 5% of global wealth holders worldwide in the debt-based system, then you need to be looking very, very seriously at Bitcoin, in my view. You have to be thinking about ways that you can separate yourself from the system, and you need to be in an asset that is decentralized. Of course, there's precious metals, there's gold and there's silver, and they will preserve and protect your wealth, but try taking $1 million worth of gold across international borders. How are you going to do it? Gold and silver, and particularly gold, over the course of time, over decades, it does a great job of preserving your wealth, preserving your purchasing power, but it's not going to do a lot to actually grow it over the next 5 to 10 years. And so in my view, Bitcoin, which is the new digital gold, completely transportable, decentralized, global wealth that you can take with you at any time, that is the place to be. That's what I truly believe, and it's not just me. There's people way smarter than me that are pounding the table right now and are saying exactly the same thing. And so if you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, I am looking at this Bitcoin thing, but I'm worried about its volatility, that is something you're going to have to get over, because you have to understand that Bitcoin is what we often refer to as an adolescent asset. Now, anything that is adolescent, now I've raised 3 girls through their teenage years, and I can tell you that teenagers, particularly girls, they have their ups and downs, okay? They are volatile, and they have their good and bad days. And Bitcoin is an adolescent. It's 16 years old. It's having its good and bad days. It has its ups and downs. It has its pullbacks. It feels really good one day, and on other days it's in the doldrums. That is a normal evolution of growing up. Okay, so I want you to be thinking about where Bitcoin is going to be, not where it is now. As Bitcoin matures, what is this going to mean to your future wealth? What is this going to mean for the rest of the world as we start to utilize Bitcoin not just a store of value, but also as a medium of exchange, a global peer-to-peer value system, and also as a unit of account, where not just individuals, but corporations and governments around the world are going to be looking for an incorruptible form of finance, of wealth, of money, to settle their trade. Because they can't trust one form of currency anymore, because we've seen over the past 70, 100 years, whatever it is, that all trust eventually gets broken. There's a saying that states that absolute power corrupts absolutely, and this is what happens when you centralize all of the power in a currency or in money to a small faction or a small group of people or one particular country. And so absolute power eventually corrupts absolutely, and this is why there's a problem right now, and there are countries around the world that are looking to distance themselves from the dollar. So we're in changing times here. Now, Bitcoin is an adolescent asset. It's going to test your conviction. It's going to continue to be volatile, but it's volatile to the upside. And so you just have to zoom out and think about where you're going to be in 5, 7, 10 years from now. And so the name of the game is realizing that there is a window of opportunity. It's going to test you, And you have to embrace that test. You have to be the one to stay disciplined, focused. You have to start preparing, and you have to start stacking, studying, furthering your education, connecting with community of like-minded people, and securing your Bitcoin into self-custody to the nth degree. That's really the name of the game. Forget the price. Forget the price. It does not matter what the fiat currency price is today. It is going to be a blip, an absolute blip on a price chart 5 years from now. So just be focused on where this is going, not where this is. Now, just to end this video, I want to share some quick numbers with you based on history and based on where we think this could be going. Historically, Bitcoin's CAGR, its compound annual growth rate, we know over the past 10 years it's been up around 80%. Over the last 5 to 7 years, it's been around 59%, to be exact, 59% for the past 5 to 7 years. Now, if you go and look at different institutions that look at wealth transformations, they look at the evolution of new technologies and adoption curves and the rotation of capital and all those kinds of things, you begin to realize that these institutions who do this sort of research, they are right at the coalface, because they're not just biased and looking at Bitcoin from a biased point of view. They actually understand capital rotation. They understand and manage other asset classes for people. They're managing people's wealth. And so being at the coalface, they can look at history and then they can make predictions into the future. Now, one of these institutions is, of course, ARK Invest, ARK Invest. You can look it up for yourself on Google. Headed up by Cathie Wood. Cathie is a very outspoken advocate for Bitcoin, as you'll see if you've watched many of the Bitcoin podcasts out there. Now, what they are predicting is that in the next 5 years, their latest prediction, which was recently revised, is that they believe that Bitcoin is going to be sitting at 2.4 million US dollars within the next 5 years, so by the year 2030. Now, if that comes to pass, then that means that Bitcoin is going to grow. It's going to compound annual grow. Its CAGR over the next 5 years is going to be 72%. So right now, the last 5 to 7 years, 59%. They're predicting that it could be as high as 72% over the next 5, which would put us at a $2.4 million US Bitcoin, which in today's exchange rate is somewhere around 3.5 to 4 million Australian dollars. Now, even if they're half right, I'm sure you will agree that it's going to put your savings and your capital in a place that is infinitely more productive and efficient than any asset you can find inside the legacy system. But let's look at some basic goals here, or some stacking targets. If you were to achieve them, what this could mean in 10 years from now. Now, I always like to look in simple round figures when it comes to targets for Bitcoin. So what I mean by that is there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. You don't need to buy one whole Bitcoin, okay? I'm not suggesting anybody do that off the bat. Now, if you can get there and you've done some homework on Bitcoin, you know that this is the future and you're comfortable with that, then by all means, if you can do it, great. But if you're sitting on the sidelines thinking, well, where do I start? I would say just aim for a couple of round figures. Let's say 1 million Satoshis. 1 million Satoshis is 0.01 Bitcoin, which today is going to exchange at around about 1,700 Australian dollars. Let's call it about 10,000 to 11,000 USD. Now, if Bitcoin continues at just 50% CAGR over the next 10 years, then that 1,700 Australian dollars today will be worth $100,000 in 10 years' time. Now, if you said, well, look, I can actually get to 0.1 Bitcoin, that's 10 million Satoshis. 10% of a Bitcoin is 10 million Satoshis. Then that's $17,000 today, Australian dollars, about 10 to 11,000 US dollars. And in 10 years, that at 50% CAGR, that would be worth $1 million. And then you can just multiply this out. If you got to one whole Bitcoin, that's 100 million Satoshis. That's about 170,000 Australian dollars today. And that'd be worth 10 million in 10 years if Bitcoin performs at 50% CAGR. And so any way you look at this, you begin to realize that any kind of meaningful allocation to Bitcoin is going to put you in a really, really good wealth position and potentially in an elite class, particularly if you've mastered self-custody. And so I just wanted to really get across the point today that we're in amongst the greatest wealth transfer in history, and it's never been a more important time to be learning about Bitcoin and how it is front and center in this conversation. And even if you're already in Bitcoin, you need to be asking yourself, what can you do to stack harder? What can you do to learn more? What can you do to connect with a like-minded group of people? And what can you do to learn about mastering self-custody? And when you do all of those things, it's not hard. It just takes effort. It just takes consciousness. It just takes some focus from you. You're going to put yourself in amongst the new wealth elite, in my view. So I want to leave it there today. The task at hand is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of taking action, not just consuming information, but actually being a creator, being the master of your own destiny. And that requires you to actually get off the fence and to actually move, to stack, to secure, and to just keep learning and growing. So if you got some value today, please like, share, and subscribe. If you need to book a call with me, you'll see a link in the show notes below. I'd love to meet you on Zoom, talk you through it, share my screen, share some resources with you based on where you're at, what you need, and you'll get tremendous clarity and confidence from that. Other than that, I want to wish you a great day. Thank you for tuning in. This is Zane signing out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.